Okay, we're live. Uh, and welcome. I wanted to start out with a simple concept about anxiety. A lot of the people out there really like CBT, and I like CBT when I'm in front of a person that I think would be good for CBT. I get on there and I start sizing them up. Some people pull for it. And the thing about CBT is it's really simple and easy to explain. And that's the beauty of CBT. So let's say, here's how it works. Okay. Ready for this? Okay. This is how it works. Okay. Um, think of a situation in your life. Let me think of a situation. Let's see. I just went shopping. I bought some ice cream or something like that. What else happened today? Okay. My friend went to the doctor because my friend had a back pain, and they went to the doctor, and the doctor stuck this needle in there. Said, "Boom, you're gonna feel better now." And my friend was like, "Yay!" And my friend said, "Yay," because my friend believed that they were gonna get better. And I was like, "Yay, my friend's gonna get better." And then something happened, and what happened was is your brain and your spine are covered by this like stuff called Dura matter. It's like kind of like the packaging that you put in your package, right? And it covers up your spine and your back. And this doctor used a needle and went in there and punctured this stuff that covers up your spine, and spinal fluid leaked out. Now the person has all these symptoms, and they're tired, and they're vomiting, and their heads hurt, and stuff like that. And it's really, really unfortunate. And I was concerned because my friend was acting strange. But we went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "I know what this is. This is leaking spinal fluid." And so leaking spinal fluid happened, and the doctor said, "Okay, now what you need to do is rest for a week." Okay. How did I feel? I felt happy. And that might sound strange, but an activating event came along. My friend got injured and went to the doctor. That's A, the activating event, right? And then I felt an emotional consequence. C, I felt happy that my friend went to the doctor and found out that they have leaking spinal fluid, and that explains their tiredness and fatigue and their pain. And I felt happy. Now, it's not that the doctor's saying, "Hey, you're leaking spinal fluid," that made me happy. It was my intervening belief about that. The B right here. So an activating event comes along. My friend's spinal fluid is leaking, and that leads to a belief that I understand now what's going on, and things are going to be okay. And that leads to an emotional consequence C, which means that that I was happy. Now, if I held a different belief, right? If I held a different belief, like this is terrible, this shouldn't be exist. I wish it never happened. This is terrible. I hate that doctor. That doctor sucks. Then I'd have a different emotion. I would feel resentment, or I'd feel disappointment. So the idea then is to challenge these beliefs. Like, why should you resent it? Is it written that all doctors are fallible? Well, no, they're not. Do doctors make a mistake? Yes. Is this person capable of getting better? Yes. Is it inconvenient? Yes. Are there any upsides to it? Well, they get some time to have someone take care of them. So just because they got a shot and they're leaking spinal fluid doesn't make you miserable and unhappy. It's your belief about it that intervenes there. Now, so our emotions, according to this theory, are malleable, but they're dictated by your thoughts. I respectfully disagree. Whether you're watching this live or on playback, I'd like you to think about a time, where something happened, and it led to a strong emotional reaction. Um, let's say, what's really interesting is that one of the founders of CBT, Albert Ellis, was painfully shy. And so he picked a park bench in Central Park, and he said, the first 100 attractive women out there that sit down on this bench, I'm going to ask them out. And so he hung out in the park, and then he started waiting for him. And then when they would sit down, he'd approach them, hey, I'm Albert, and stuff like that. And Albert Ellis would go over there and say to him, like, hey, my name's Albert, and I'd like to go out with you. Will you go out with me? And he did this 100 times to 100 women. And go ahead and guess. Take a moment and guess. How many of those 100 women that he found attractive that sat on that park bench in Central Park, how many of them said, yes, I will go on a date with you? And this is like, the early 60s, right? Like Austin Power days. And the answer is 2. Only 2 people. 98% said no. 98% said, no, I'm not going to go out on a date with you. Not interested. 2 of them said yes. And then he felt something, right? He felt something, but he was painfully shy. That was his big, worry in life, is that he's really shy. And so he got their phone numbers, and he called them up, and he asked them out. And one of them gave the wrong phone number. She said, oh, my number is 555-5555, and I live at number 55 Drive. Right. It wasn't real. And the other one was a no-show. But so, one thing that happened is that he learned that just because he didn't get what he was wanted, even though he was painfully shy, it wasn't a complete disaster. The world didn't end. Everything was fine. Rejection can't kill you. And so now, after that, being armed with 100 attempts, 2 successes, which eventually turned out to be failures, he learned something. He learned that rejection is not so bad, and that he can survive it. So the next time he did it, he didn't feel unhappy or worried. He didn't feel anxious. He didn't feel defeated. He went ahead and felt fine. And by fine, I mean he felt he felt within normal limits of feelings, even though he was rejected 100 times. So, I had this one client who was supposed to take an at-home finger prick test. He needed like a blood sample for the doctor. And so he sat there with this like finger prick test, and he sat there and he worried about it, right? And he was like, oh man, this thing's going to be painful and stuff like that. So an activating event came along. He got a finger picking device, and he felt worried. The emotional consequence. So an activating event A came along, got a finger pricker, like a sharp needle, and he felt worried. And it was because his belief was that this is going to be painful and terrible. After he did it, he realized that this is a medical grade device. He didn't feel a thing. He got his fingerprint, he got a finger prick, he got his blood, and he got his test. Everything was fine. And so now when he sees one of those, an activating event comes along, he feels at ease. He feels contentment, and he feels curiosity, because his belief is that it's not disaster. So the CBT model is very lovely and all that, and it works for certain things, but it's not enough. And I'll tell you why. Because change is not carried in the belief like the CBT. Like the C in CBT means cognitive. That means thinking. But you have a lot of things that I call private events. And these are things that only you feel right now. So like right now, you're looking at me on some screen somewhere, and things are going through your mind. You're feeling things, you're thinking things. You can think that I'm an idiot. You can think I'm a genius or whatever. And so like an activating comes along, you see Dr. Fur, clinical psychologist, uh, handsome guy, right? Kidding. But an activating event comes along, you see Dr. Fur, oh, this terrible guy. And then you have a feeling, an activating event, and so you have a belief about that. But I would argue to you that it's not the fact that I showed up on the screen that made you feel whatever you feel. And that it's not, we shouldn't be targeting your beliefs about that. That here's the dirty little secret. You want to know the secret? Change is carried in the emotion. So like instead of the guy with the little medical device that wants to prick his finger, instead of focusing in on the beliefs, and the beliefs are good, we don't want to discount the beliefs. The beliefs are important, but it's not enough. We got to focus in on that emotion, because what he is worried. He's worried, right? He's worried about that. And Albert Ellis, sitting on the park bench, seeing an attractive woman, and he's vowed he's going to ask 100 women out that sit on that park bench. And he was worried because he was believing that he would become rejected. And the beliefs are good, but it's not enough. And so what we got to do is we got to focus in on the worry. The emotion is the important part. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, at least it has the behavior in there, but where's the emotion? So the worry, and here's a little trick that a lot of people aren't going to tell you, but luckily you're here. You're a higher primate. You can understand the words that come out of my mouth. And if you don't understand it, there's probably some sort of subtitles, and you can translate it with a phone. And the thing is that worry is a trick. It's a trap. People sit there and worry about things. And why are they doing it? Because they're trying to reduce the emotion. So what they do is they sit in their beds at night. You're supposed to be going to sleep, but like say you got some talk tomorrow, like something's going to happen, or like maybe you've got a crucial flight and you're not sure, like if you typed your name wrong in the computer or something like that, or maybe it's going to rain. It's going to rain, and you really want to go on vacation, and you're worried that flight's going to be canceled, and you sit there and you worry about it. And instead of sleeping, which is what you should be doing in the bed, you sit there and you start puzzling things like, what am I going to do about that? And it's an attempt to reduce the anxiety. And here's another dirty little secret. That is a form of avoidance designed to reduce the anxiety, and it's going to keep you more anxious longer. I'm going to repeat that for all the people across the world to hear, that they need to hear this message, that if you sit there and you catch yourself worrying about something over and over again, you're trying to affect something in the future that hasn't happened yet. And it's a trap. You're going to stay more worried more longer, rather than saying, I'm worried that my plane's going to be canceled because it's going to rain tomorrow. What you should be doing is say, I'm anxious. Now it's time to go to bed, and let it go. Let go of all that. And then you can sleep. But if you sit there and you start challenging people's beliefs, you can't talk people out of their beliefs as much as the CBT people might want you to. But I'm going to go ahead and guess that what's really happening is once they start questioning their distorted beliefs, their exaggerated beliefs, they start to have an emotional, because they make contact with that emotion, then it goes down. It's not the beliefs that make it go down. It's not, but it's the fact that you're dealing with the emotion, because the emotion carries the change. And that's an important thing to know. There's a thing called generalized anxiety disorder. And generalized anxiety disorder is a form of anxiety where people sit there and worry about stuff. That's the hallmark. They start worrying about stuff. And what they do is they want to make the worry go away. Now they don't know that that's what they're doing while they're worrying, but they sit there and then they start getting things like irritability, difficulty concentrating, difficulty sleeping, muscle tension, and so on and so forth. And the more they sit there and they wrestle with it, the more trapped they get. There was this delightful study done in part by Orange County, California research place called Chapman. And what they did is they had people put on those little finger traps, those Chinese finger traps, like they're like these little tubes, and you put your finger in the tube, right? Like imagine this like is like a little tube, right? And you put your fingers in the tube, and then they said, and then have you ever tried this before? You put your finger in the little tube, and the more you pull away, the tighter the little fibers that are woven together. When you pull it apart, they stretch, and then the circumference of the tube gets smaller as it gets stretched, and it closes in. And the more you pull, the more you try and get out of the finger trap, the tighter it gets, the more uncomfortable it gets, and the more stuck you get, right? And it was really simple. They said, hey, your anxiety is a lot like this finger trap. The more you try and get away from it, the more you trapped you are, the more stuck you are, and the longer it lasts and the more uncomfortable it is, right? And then I'm not going to bore you with the details on this one because I'm trying to be entertaining right now. And can anybody send me a chat, ask me a question? I was watching some Japanese girl. I'm in Japan right now. I was watching some Japanese girl's birthday celebration, and I get I'm not a cute Japanese girl on a birthday and all that stuff. But there was the comment section was lit up, and nobody ever asked me a question. What do I got to do to get a question out of or a comment out of somebody? And if you don't like me or you don't like what I'm saying, tell me. I would love to hear that. But I'm not going to bore you with the details of the experiment. But they had two groups, right? They had one group where they said, hey, your anxiety is like a finger trap. The more you try and get away, the more stuck you are, the longer you're going to be stuck, and the more uncomfortable it's going to get. But if you lean into it, then you get some wiggle room and you can get out. And that's the way anxiety works. So that was one group. The other group, they didn't say anything. Actually, they did. They said, fight your symptoms. Don't be anxious, right? And then they had a third group, which was a waiting list. It's kind of like a placebo group. And then they had them do this thing that induces anxiety. And of the two groups, they had them like hooked up to like electronic devices to measure their skin responses and their heart rates and their sweating and all this stuff like that. And at the end, the people who were told, fight your anxiety, don't be anxious, that kind of thing, a lot of them dropped out. They said they wouldn't come back. And even though they had the exact same physical readouts, from their skin, their heart rate, their breathing, and all that stuff, everybody had the same physiological response to the difficult task. The people who got the finger traps and were said, hey, your anxiety is a lot like this finger trap. The more you fight it, the longer it's going to stick around. But if you lean into it, you get some wiggle room. Those people, they all had the same physiological responses, but the people who were taught acceptance and tolerance of their anxiety, they reported less distress, even though everything else was the same. And they said, yeah, it was kind of interesting. I'd come back. Right. But the people who said, control your anxiety, don't feel anxiety, they rated the same exact experience as more problematic and distressing, and they wouldn't come back to do it. And that's the way worry works. And another thing that you should watch out for in your personal life is when you feel anxious or if you're having a panic attack, people start doing what I call safety-seeking behaviors. They start doing things like try to breathe slow. If you listen to the song I created on the channel, Something Strange is Happening to Me, it's about panic. I wrote it to try and convey something into Hindi because I don't know how to use software to like change my English into Hindi. So I wrote a song because I knew it would translate it and I could set it to music. And it's a nice way of conveying the exact same thing, which is the symptoms and the strategies of how to deal with panic. And interestingly enough, the English version now has, I think, like 25,000 views. I'm like a rock star or something over here. So anyway, the idea like in that song is like don't try and breathe it away, don't try and like rush water on your face, don't try and like look for safety because panic attacks just come and go just like your anxiety is like a stream, like a river. It's always in motion, it's always flowing, and there's another emotion right behind it if you let it go, like the finger trap thing. Now here's another thing that people do all the time that they're taught to do. And I'm telling you, it's a trap. We are socialized just naturally to say, I felt good, or I felt great, or I felt terrible. Like when in fact they should be describing their experience and saying, I felt anxious. I felt worried. I felt distressed. I felt because anxiety has two components. The first part is that there's some sort of threat out there that hasn't happened yet. Like it could rain tomorrow and you could get your flight canceled and your expensive vacation might be delayed. That's a threat out there that would have an emotional consequence. Would you feel bad? No, you might feel disappointed. And that's better than saying, I felt bad, right? But we're socialized to call our emotions positive and negative. You see it all the time, even from like really smart psychologists. They buy into this stuff of positive and negative thoughts and positive and negative feelings. Now, behaviors we can judge all day long. If I go around like kicking puppies, I'm going to go ahead and say that's bad. But if I feel like kicking a puppy, but I don't do it, that's different. That's just a feeling. And a feeling is something that comes and goes. And if you get all twisted up in it, it'll stick around longer. But if you just let it go and notice it, like, oh, yeah, I just had a weird urge to like kick a puppy, like, but then if you let it go, then it makes no sense in the first place. But like, it goes away. But if you sit there and fight it, and you start, I'm like, I shouldn't feel that way, then it'll stick around longer. So is anxiety good and bad? No. Is love good or bad? No. Is hate bad? No. Is excitement good? Well, sometimes, I mean, it could be activating and arousing. That could be beneficial in some way, and I'll show you how. But these emotions are neither good nor bad. It's just something your brain does. Like there's a reason why we anticipate threats that haven't happened yet. There's a reason to. It's adaptive. It keeps us alert. It keeps us on point. Now, this is different than fear, by the way. I want to make a big distinction here because, like say for example, some like there's a fire in your house or something like that, then you're going to feel fear. And fear is different than anxiety because it's happening right now. That's real. That's not something that could possibly happen but hasn't yet. The house is on fire, and if your brain's working right, you're going to have a panic response to save your life. That's fear. That's different than anxiety. These are totally different concepts. Now, I promised you that I would show you how having anxiety can be adaptive and useful, because anxiety is neither good nor bad. It's just something our brain does. Now, our relationship to the anxiety can change everything. It can be a big game changer, and it can help you. So I hope you listen to this. So let's say something important's coming up that's anxiety provoking. Like, let's say you got to give a speech to the board of directors, or let's say you've got to do a job interview, or let's say you're in the NBA finals and you're going to at the very end of the game, um, you're tied even, and you're at the foul point line, and you get a free throw. And for people not familiar with basketball, that's that point in the game where everybody sort of like there's like they call it the key in the basket. Well, I'm not going to draw it here. But if you're at the key of the baskets, you're going to do the free throw, and you got to throw the winning shot, right? Now most people would argue that that would be an anxiety provoking event, right? Because there's a lot riding on this. Like if it's the NBA, then this thing that you've practiced for all your life is about to come down to millions of dollars for you and your teammates and all of the people in the organization. There's a lot riding on this shot. Let's say, for example, you're going to a job interview, and you're anxious about it, and you got to nail this job interview. So let's use those two examples. One, you're in the NBA. It's the clock's run out. You got to hit this one free throw. If you win, you get millions of dollars. Everybody, all your teammates gets extra millions of dollars, and the organization gets $1 million. And all your life, you've been planning for this. You just gotta stand there. It's a free throw. There's a reason why they call it a free throw. And you can take your time, and you can throw the ball up there. And if it goes in, boom, you win. And if it doesn't, then you don't win, and you don't get all the millions of dollars. Or like say you're going to the job interview, and you've got to nail this because you need a job, and you've prepared for this job interview. Now, let's say, for example, you're very, very anxious, right? Like off the charts anxious, like jittery, sweaty, and your hands are shaking, and you can barely hold the ball. I don't know if you've been in that situation. I've been in that situation where I'm so anxious that I'm shaking and I can't, and you drop and stuff, and you're tripping over things, and you get lost in your thoughts. Um, or let's say the opposite happens. Like let's say you don't have enough anxiety. Let's say you think, I got this. This is no problem. It's in the bag. I don't need to prepare for this interview. Or like say you're the NBA guy. You're like, hey man, I've done this all my life. I'm just gonna, I'm not even gonna think about this. I'm just gonna wing it, throw that thing up there. It's gonna go in. It's gonna go in. I am the star. I'm the rock star, and everything's gonna be fine. So whoop, throws it up there. Now, here's how the anxiety can be adaptive. So let's say I'm going to draw a little graph for you, right? Looks good here. I hope I do this right for you. Get this camera thing off right here. So on this axis, let's call it performance. And okay, so we got performance here, right? Can you see that? Got performance here. And let's put anxiety down here. Okay. So let's do that. Anxiety. All right. So we got a graph going on here. We've got anxiety and performance. And let's see if we can wait for someone to come in the room. Let's see here. Okay, good. So now let's make a gradient on this. Let's try and quantify this a bit. And by the way, we can quantify all this stuff. We have these measures that have been, developed and tested and what we call normed. And by norming, meaning we find out what we an average distribution is like, there's an average, right? Like here's the average, right? And then off to the wings are like less average here and less average here. There's like kind of like this bell curve that goes like this. And most 70% of people are here. And then like 1% here and 1% over the opposite direction over here. So you get this kind of bell curve thing going on. And so we norm that and we test it, and then we run all sorts of statistical analyses, and we come up with, we want to make sure that this thing is valid, that it measures the thing it's supposed to measure. And then we want to make sure it's reliable, meaning we want to make sure that when we test it, we get the same kind of results every time. That doesn't mean that everybody answers the same. Some days you're going to be anxious, some days you're not. I mean, but in that big distribution of like say 1,000 people, we want to make sure that we get the same kind of results every time. So we want to make it reliable and repeatable, right? So once you get all that established, then you can create these questionnaires and you can give them to people, and then you can, like test out all of the questions on there to make sure they're reliable, valid, and repeatable. And now you've got a nice little questionnaire, and you can ask people questions based upon the criteria of the diagnostic manual, and you can rate people's levels of performance. So you can get a number, is basically what I'm saying. A scientifically validated number, right? Okay, so this is the way it works. You got your performance, and instead of putting numbers here, I mean, I guess I can make little tick marks here, like little tick marks. And these are different numbers. And we can say that this is really high anxiety, and this is really low anxiety. So, right, so you can measure it from really low to really high anxiety when in performance, right? Like, did you have a low performance? Did you really suck at throwing the free throw? Did you really suck at the job interview? Did you do a good job? Did you perform well at that task? Because at that moment, all you got to do is do a good job at this job interview, right? So then there's this other axis, right? Anxiety. And we can quantify it. We got 0 to like, let's say 100, right? Like 0 to 100. And then you can make little tick marks here. And then you can give people the questionnaire for their anxiety, and you can come up with a number for it. And again, 0 would be low and 100 would be high. So let me write this out. I hope I'm doing this right. I'm kind of doing this on the fly. Here we go. Does that make sense? There we go. Yeah. So you got anxiety here. We can quantify it. And the performance, that one's pretty easy too. Like we can like say, how many times did you, what's your performance? What's the average number of people who like hit 100 free throws, right? Like what's the rate? And a high performance would be like, 90% or 99%. And a low performance would be like, once in a while. I've heard NBA players say in like some days they can't throw a basketball into the ocean, let alone a basketball hoop. But we're looking for an aggregate. Or in this case, we're looking at a situation where your performance is going to dictate whether or not that ball goes in there. Now, there's such a thing as luck, but these are professionals and they're expected to perform. And you're expected to perform on your job interview. You're supposed to deliver the goods, right? So let's say you don't have any anxiety. You figure, I don't need to prepare for this interview at all. So then your performance and your anxiety are both very low, right? Or let's say you're so anxious. You're like, oh my goodness, I got to throw this ball in the hoop, or else everybody's going to be mad at me. There's millions of people watching. I want to make millions extra. I want that shiny gold ring that like says I'm the champion. I want all my teammates and fans and the organization to respect me. I want everybody to benefit. So in this case, then the anxiety would be high. And if you're like jittering and trying to throw a basketball up there, it ain't gonna work, right? You're gonna be like, "Ah," and you're gonna drop the ball, and it's gonna sort of bounce slowly on the floor away, and everybody's gonna boo and jeer at you. And so the anxiety's really high. Anxiety's really high. See that right there? And the performance is not high. It's also very low right there. So what happens in between, right? Does it ever get better? Well, it turns out that yes, there's something really important here. There's a secret sauce that, between the low anxiety and the high anxiety and the low performance and the high performance is a thing called the optimal level of anxiety. Anxiety is not bad because what happens is, and this is well known, you get this curve here. And whether it's a job interview or whether it's talking to your spouse or throwing that winning free throw, there's this optimal level right here, the sweet spot. That's the optimal level of anxiety where you're not falling apart here and you're not so like confident, overly confident that you ruin the situation. But if you have just enough anxiety, you're on point. You know how to like deliver the goods and you're alert because something could go wrong. Remember, I said that anxiety is neither good nor bad. What it is it's a state where your mind is aware of a threat, and you that threat has happened. It could happen in the future. It hasn't happened yet, and most importantly, I didn't say this before, but most importantly, you're vulnerable to it. So there's something bad that could happen, and it could happen in the future, the near future, and it could happen to you. I could fall apart, try and make that free throw, and it doesn't work. That's real. Um, and if you don't have any anxiety and you don't believe there's any threat at all, and you're not attuned, you're not on point, then you're not aware of the threat, which is you're about to blow this thing for everybody. But if you have just enough anxiety and you're in that sweet spot, you're on point. You're alerted to the situation. You're aroused. But you're not falling apart over here where you're having like panic, and you're not so cocky and arrogant that you think that everything's going to go well. You're like right in that sweet spot, that zone where you're on point and you're ready to get things done. And so the point is that anxiety is neither good nor bad. It's something our brains do because we've adapted to look for threats in the future that haven't happened yet. We're looking for things before they happen, and we want to be alert to them, and we want to be on point, but we don't want to be so anxious that we're freaked out, and we don't want to be so confident that we're going to like get ourselves in trouble. So our relationship is more important to our situation. Our relationship to our anxiety is more important than anything else. So the CBT people might sit there and be like, "Is there any evidence that you can throw a ball, or have you practiced before?" And they'll sit there and tinker with your thoughts. But what a good psychologist will do is they'll focus in on that emotion and your relationship to that emotion. And it's really interesting whether or not you believe that it's really terrible to be anxious, because we know if you try and make it go away, it sticks around longer or gets worse. And so, if you want to be prepared to deliver the goods under these very difficult circumstances, you need to have your relationship to your anxiety and realize that that anxiety If you make friends with it, it can help you, right? Um, and so like one of the interesting things is like in CBT, it's kind of like a cookbook therapy. They have like a specific procedure. And one thing that happened was that people started getting better before all the ingredients of the therapy were delivered. And so then people started scratching their head like, well, wait a minute. If this theory is working right, how come we're starting to see changes in somebody before we've done our job? And the reason is because people started becoming aware of the emotional component. Even though they were talking about the feelings, what was happening is they were making contact with the emotion. And then I guarantee you, if you have problems in life, your relationship to your emotions are probably one where you're either not in contact with it, or you're getting twisted up with it and trying to make it go away through whatever reason. Or even worse, like say like start drinking like a fish, or smoking, or doing something else, because now the problem really hasn't gone away. You may have numbed it, you may have altered your physiological chemistry, but I got news for you. There's consequences for these things, and your body and your health are going to be affected by that. And it's much more effective to zero in on the emotion and how you deal with that. Um, if any of this doesn't make sense, I really hope that whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching this on replay, that you screw up your courage and you go ahead and ask me, like, what was that? And I'm happy to explain it again. But from those anomalies in the CBT research, we started noticing the benefits of mindfulness. Now, I've made two or three kind of mindfulness based videos, and much to my dismay, um, they aren't getting the same attention as something came to the door when I was about to do my psychopath, um, my criminal video, and this thing came for me, right? This envelope, and it was full of these T-shirts, these bunny therapy T-shirts, and yeah, and of course, if you go to the channel and look up the bunny therapy and all the multi layers behind the bunny therapy and why I call it the bunny therapy, even though it sounds silly, but the fact that I opened up this package online, on live, got all these views and likes, lots of thumbs up and stuff like that. But when I sit there and I explain like how important this mindfulness concept is to changing your life, fewer people are watching that. How do you explain that? You're watching me open a package and people are all over it. Explaining to them mindfulness, I lose them somehow. So if you have ideas around that, let me know. Packaging it into songs seems to help a little bit. Um, so, anxiety is kind of like my jam. I really enjoy anxiety because, A, it can't hurt you, and B, it's there's something you can do about it, and it's easy to explain. Now, it's not easy if you're the person being anxious, and I've been anxious, and if you're human, you're anxious. If you're a mammal, mammals often get anxious, right? I don't know if other animals do, but us higher primates, like me, I'm a higher primate, and so are you. Uh, if you get anxious, that's a reality of life. There's no way around it, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be anxious. And it's neither good nor bad. There's something, but your relationship to it changes everything. So, having said all that, I'm new to this whole live streaming thing, and I'm not sure if I'm very good at it. I'm trying to I'm tinkering with the different times, because right now, if I look at the world clock, because almost all of my people are not in the US, almost all of my people, and we're over 30,000 subscribers now. I hope that you're one of them. And if you're not, become one and start looking out for this. I'm going to try and do this more often. And if you could please ask me a question, if you could summon up the curiosity and ask a question, I'm more than happy to answer it. But let's take a look at the world clock right now. It's noon in London. So to my English viewers, hello, and please like and subscribe. In Mexico, in Cancun, where the lovely beach is, it's 7:16 a.m. Good morning. And in Tokyo, where I'm at right now, it's 9:17 p.m. And maybe they've got the Sunday scaries, and they're all getting ready to be working. If you don't know what a salary man is, look it up. It's an amazing testament to being a salary man in Japan is an amazing testament to commitment and putting your emotions kind of down in service of getting your goals met. In Germany, it's 1:17 p.m. In Honolulu, it's 2 a.m. So if you're in Honolulu, and the Hawaiians, they go to bed early. Everything closes early, and they get up early and they go surfing. So if you're in Hawaii, go to bed. And in New York, it's 7 in the morning. So they're probably rolling out of bed right now. And what is it in India? I think right now in India, it is about 5 p.m. And the Indian market, the Indian population is absolutely staggering on this channel. So, hello to all the Indians, shukran, shukriya, and to all the Hawaiians, aloha, even though you should be in bed. And to the New Yorkers, forget about it. I'm almost done. I'm going to schedule another live cast, but I welcome your questions, and I hope you join the other higher primates, the 30,000 higher primates that you are, and that means that you're intelligent, you're capable and change. That means that being a higher primate, that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have flaws, and there's no reason why you shouldn't have flaws. But that doesn't mean you give up. That means you keep pushing. And if you're depressed, golly, that's a rough road to go down. And, it affects your body. It affects your sleep. It affects your ability to enjoy the things that you love. It interferes with your sex life, and it just feels like hopeless. And as a person, we're all going to feel some sort of depression at some point. It's when we get wrapped up in it that's the problem. And I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but psychotherapy, particularly CBT, IPT, and psychodynamic brief models, all have the same effect as medication on mild to moderate depression. Once you get over to severe depression, I'm going to say, you need to see your primary care physician. You need to see your psychiatrist. You need to take care of that, because depression can kill you if you get suicidal, because you feel like it's the end of the world. And what's the point? Because the future's hopeless. But it will pass. It will pass. And through regimens of diet-based, physical-based, medical-based, therapy-based, relationship-based interventions, we got a lot of tools in the pocket. So hang in there if you're depressed. If you're panicking, I've got some good news and some bad news. A lot of people show up at my door because they've been to the ER and they get put through all the tests, and they realize that, well, the doctor says to them, there's nothing wrong with you. You're panicking. This is all in your head. And so they show up, and then we realize that they're doing all the things that I mentioned before, the safety seeking behaviors, the catastrophic thoughts that all the CBT people are interested in. CBT actually has quite a nice um, intervention for panic. But I had an ER doctor as a client once, and we were arguing about some stuff in a healthy and productive way. Two professionals, one talking to another, and I asked him point blank, can the panic attack hurt you? He's like, well, no, it really can't. So even though one of the symptoms of panic is you feel like you're dying, and let's face it, that's easy to say on the surface. Oh, I felt like dying. No, these people really feel like they're dying. They think it's the end of the line. They think that they got to call 911 and get to the emergency room because they think they're having a heart attack or they've had a stroke or something like that. All these catastrophic thoughts. And that's where the CBT stuff is really handy for the panic, because if you realize that your brain is like feeding you all sorts of thoughts, and that if you can catch them when they're down low at say 0 to 100, if you can catch it at a 20, 30, maybe a 40, and say, okay, I know what this is, I've got this, even though I'm panicking, I can see that I understand what this is. I can ride this out. I've been down this road. I am safe, even if I don't feel safe. And I have all these urges to do all these things that are actually going to keep you more panicked and more anxious longer, by the way. If I can just sit there and ride it out, then the panic attack tends to peter out. But once you're in full blown on panic, there's nothing anybody can do for you except for give you that shot of Ativan and kind of like alter your chemistry, which for acute things, like if somebody's like in a recent combat situation or somebody's gone through something traumatic and their bodies are just like vibrating from activation. Okay, I'm not going to kill you for someone like having medical intervention to cool your jets in that moment. But it's no way to live your life. And so those people who are taking benzodiazepines, like Xanax and Valium and stuff like that, that's a trap and it's addictive. Your body chemistry gets used to it. It's a losing battle. Now, if you're depressed and you're on SSRIs, SNRIs, or some of the newer medications, and you have severe depression, good for you. Good for you. But the front line of treatment should be just plain old psychotherapy, examining your thoughts and feelings, examining what's important to you, and seeing what's getting in the way of that, because there is hope, there is relief. There is a way to navigate this, and the knowledge that it will pass, and that you can handle it, that you can cope with it, and it will pass. And if that doesn't work, then we can bring in the medication. And if it's really severe depression, and by severe, like you probably haven't seen it, but when you see it, it's quite profound. Like you can ask somebody, how are you today? And they're just sort of looking at you. And you're like, is anybody home like in there? And all of a sudden they start to respond, fine, like that. Because their minds are on such a delay, because their bodies are so overwhelmed from the depression. And they're actually kind of dangerous, because if they get enough energy, they might want to kill themselves because they have the energy to try, because they don't like living this way. Shock therapy works. Nobody understands why. And it's not like, like in the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where they sit there and, they do all this damage. These days, we know how to do it. And it's just on one side of the brain. And it creates a convulsion. I witnessed it. And the people sit there and have kind of like this seizure, and it's kind of like rebooting your computer, and it is amazing. I saw this one lady, sort of like the way I described before, and her face was all bruised up and stuff. She got the shock treatment. She comes up to me the next time and she said, "Hi, how are you?" And I was just like, wow, I am a great therapist, because last time I saw her, I sat down with her and I'm going to stick with her and I'm by her side and I'm going to do the right thing and I'm going to connect with her, even if she's almost like unresponsive. I'm going to connect with this person and I'm going to do a good job. And so she comes up to me the next time and she's like, hey, how are you? And all stuff like that. And I'm like, look how great I am. You know, like, wow, look at me. That totally worked. It was the shock therapy. It's amazing. Um, but that's for the extreme cases. The medication should be for pretty extreme. For everything else, there's therapy. I hope that people watching this, because I'm going to stop now, but I hope that people that watch this on replay can use the timestamps and pick out the useful bits and discard the rest of it. And I'm going to set up another one. And I'm tinkering with the time zones right now. It looks like Sunday evening is not the most productive time, but we'll get back up in the saddle and we'll try again tomorrow in the morning. We'll try again in the evening, and we'll try again at noontime. So keep an eye out for the channel. And if you have something you'd like to discuss, please let me know. I'd be delighted to get your feedback, to hear what you see, hear what you have to say, to know what's on your mind. If you go to the Patreon, look at the link below, and there's the link to therapist for me, the number 4 for me.jp. That's the Japanese version, but it's linked to the New York one. The Japanese one's in English and Japanese, and the one in New York is very similar, but depending on, it really comes down to time zone. But I have therapists available in both countries, and anyone around the world can seek out the services. We can arrange that, no problem. And so go to the contact page, send me a message to let me know. There's a free consultation, 15 minutes, to see if we can be of service. And if we can't be of service, I'd be delighted to send you to someone that can. And if you're in a country where you can get the reimbursement, I can explain to you the difference between different levels of service and send you in the right direction. As a matter of fact, I'd be interested in learning about it, and if you could give me some feedback about how it all turned out. But I would be delighted to have one of our people work with you. And if you're on the Patreon, you can go ahead there too. I don't think you have to subscribe, but I think the basic supporting tier, if you want to help contribute to spreading psychotherapy across the world. I'm in Japan, but I have a New York office, and we've served thousands of people and helped lots of people. We've employed lots of people. We've gotten people visas, so it's a great thing. And whether they're my employees or they're my clients or my employees' clients, the question all comes down to the same thing. What do you want different from your life, and what gets in the way of it? And almost always it's thoughts and feelings. So please go to the Patreon. I think it's $5 to just be a basic supporter. I don't think you even have to contribute anything to participate. But if you do, then you get access to some features like the most popular video on my channel, I'm Shocked, is that song I made, and I put it in Hindi and Japanese and English, and they're all 3 quite different, but there's different versions available for the $5 supporters. And at the $20 level, there's hidden content, and then there's explainers on how to do therapy that I don't tell people. If you're an armchair psychologist, or if you're someone looking to become a therapist or in training, they're useful little chapters on how to interface with your clients. And also at that level, you get a choice of t-shirts. They come in pink, they come in the black. See that? Looks very nice. Go to the channel and see why I've created this and why I called it what I did. It's multi-layered. It's fascinating. The Oracle of Delphi, Know Thyself, meditation, thinking, the thinker, the classical, the East meets West. It's really fascinating. But you get the t-shirts and stickers. And then at the $50 level, you can ask me directly a concern, a question, a complaint, a counsel, some sort of interpersonal interaction with me. And you get the stickers and you get the t-shirts. And if I can get 18 subscribers to the Patreon, it's new. I started all of this about 6 weeks ago. We're up to 30,000 subscribers and 250,000 views. So we're spreading the word. And if you want to be a part of it, please like, subscribe, ask a question on the websites, go to Patreon, contribute. And it's getting kind of late here, so I'm gonna, and it's been an hour, but please do reach out, and let's see if we can get you situated and where you want to go. And so keep an eye out for the channel, the Bunny Therapy channel, and I'll schedule another live stream. And if you want to, for free, you can just ask me a question and I'll answer it. And you don't even have to be a member. You don't have to have the free consultation by going to heraldsquarepsychology.com or therapistforme.jp. And I hope, across the world, wherever you are, that you make the most and don't avoid what you're feeling inside. It can't hurt you, and it's just a distraction from getting you what you want out of life. Okay, so why don't we stop there? And aloha, and konbawa, and sayonara, jamata. See you later. Auf Wiedersehen. Bye-bye.